What is the ego? Is it really who you are, or just who you think you are? Across history, mystics, philosophers, saints, and scientists have all pointed to one profound truth. The ego is an illusion, one that creates suffering, conflict, and fear. Yet, when understood, it can also become the doorway to freedom, peace, and awakening. In this video, we'll explore the ego from the eyes of Jiddu Krishnamurti, Christian mystics, Sufi poets, Hindu sages, Buddhist teachers, modern psychologists, and neuroscience. And we'll uncover practical ways to see through the illusion of ego and begin living from your true self. Jiddu Krishnamurti, one of the most radical thinkers of the 20th century, saw the ego not as something real, but as a psychological illusion, nothing more than a bundle of thoughts, memories, and social conditioning. He said, "Without self-knowledge, experience breeds illusion." To Krishnamurti, ego is a mental fabrication, created by thought and sustained by comparison, fear, and desire. The key? Self-inquiry. Watching your thoughts, motives, reactions, not to control them but to see them clearly. And in that seeing, the ego loses its power. In the Christian mystical tradition, saints like Saint John of the Cross and Meister Eckhart spoke of the ego as the barrier between the soul and God. Saint John urged, "To come to the knowledge of all, desire the knowledge of nothing." The dark night of the soul is not punishment. It's the process of stripping away the ego's illusions to make room for divine union. Meister Eckhart said, "To be full of things is to be empty of God. To be empty of things is to be full of God." To transcend ego, we must surrender, empty the self to be filled with the presence of the divine. Sufi poets like Rumi called the ego a veil between us and the beloved. "Die before you die," he wrote. The Sufi path is one of surrender and annihilation, not in despair but in ecstatic union. When the ego dissolves, what remains is pure love. Love means to step away from the ego, to open the eyes of inner vision. Sufis dissolve ego through devotion, humility, and service, what they call fana, or ego death. In Advaita Vedanta, the ego is called ahamkara, literally, I maker. It is the false identification of pure awareness with body and mind. Adi Shankaracharya taught, "I am not the mind, nor the intellect, nor the ego. I am pure consciousness." Through self-inquiry and meditation, one sees that the ego is just a passing thought. The true self, the Atman, is limitless, eternal, one with Brahman. Modern Saint Ramana Maharshi offered a simple but powerful practice. Ask, "Who am I?" When the question is followed to its source, the ego disappears. What remains is being itself. Buddhism is perhaps the most direct in its teaching. There is no permanent self. The ego is a collection of changing parts, body, feelings, thoughts. The Buddha taught that clinging to this self is the root of suffering. Zen Master Dogen said, "To study the self is to forget the self. To forget the self is to be actualized by all things." In meditation, we watch the self arise and fall. Eventually we see it was never real. Eckhart Tolle brought ancient wisdom to modern minds. The ego isn't who you are, he says. It's just unconscious identification with thought. When you become present, when you stop chasing the past or fearing the future, the ego begins to dissolve. The present moment is ego's greatest enemy, and your greatest freedom. Tolle teaches us to observe the ego without judgment. In that simple act of seeing, the ego's illusion loses its grip. Science is now confirming what mystics have said for centuries. The ego appears to reside in a brain network called the default mode network, active when we're thinking about ourselves. But in meditation or during moments of ego transcendence, this network quiets down. Neuroscientists are now discovering what sages knew all along. The self is a story, and that story can be let go. Why should you care about the ego? Because the ego is the root of your suffering. It's the voice that says, "I'm not enough." The fear that asks, "What will they think of me?" The craving that never ends. To see the ego clearly is to begin to live freely. Without ego, there is no me versus you. There is connection, compassion, peace. So how do you spot the ego? It hides in defensiveness and needing to be right, comparison and jealousy, the need to control everything, feeling offended, obsessive thinking about me. Each time you notice these patterns, pause, breathe, and just observe. That awareness is the beginning of freedom. You don't have to kill the ego. You just have to stop feeding it. Here are proven ways to loosen ego's grip. Mindfulness meditation. Self-inquiry. Who am I? surrendering control, compassion and loving kindness, presence in the now, creative flow and service. Don't rush, don't fight, simply notice, and return again and again to presence. The ego is a clever illusion, but it cannot survive the light of your awareness. You are not your thoughts, not your name, not your story. You are the witness, the presence, the space in which all things arise. And when the ego fades, what's left is not emptiness, but peace, joy, and love. This is the observer effect. If this video touched you, please like, comment, and subscribe. Let's walk this path of awareness together.